This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Well, good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Thursday, April 20th, 2023. We're so glad you could join us for today's show. In today's episode, I talk with Iowa State Climatologist Dr. Glisan for our weekly chat. We also have a check of that ag weather outlook, but first, let's run down the markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
We're at the end of another trading day in the ag marketplace, and for a bit of analysis, we go to Tyler Schau of agmarket.net. Tyler, first off, how are things looking in the grains today?
It was kind of a down day all across the board in all commodities. Hard to find very many bright spots. Energy down. I guess the cattle were up again today, but otherwise grains had a pretty rough day of it.
Right, of course, with those export sales, things aren't looking good. That demand has kind of been in a tug of war for a while between us and South America, shifted down to South America right now. Of course, that's an interesting situation because we were already not looking good with the USDA's expectations on export sales. So do we think, coming up later on in WASDE reports, we could see some more cuts to that?
I think that's going to, I'm not ready to jump on that ship yet. We actually, after the April WASDE or the March WASDE, had made the comment, maybe they cut corn exports a little too much. We saw corn export sales have a nice little pop there in March and early April. Now, the last 2 weeks of export sales have just not been good on corn. Today was 312,000 metric tons. We need to be pushing over 1 million. So I don't know that it's quite time to sound the alarm bells that, we're going to miss that USDA target per se. But it is something we got to be paying attention to.
And then as well, we've got that global situation. We've got countries like Poland who were having a little bit of a disagreement with Ukraine and where the grain is being shipped and where it's being sold. Do we think there's going to be any impacts to that, here in the States, or has that mostly been resolved kind of within itself?
It's resolving itself. They came out and at first it sounded like Poland and some of the other European countries weren't going to allow any of that grain into their regions. Now it's been amended to where the Ukrainian grain can't come into Poland and be sold, but it can get transported through Poland. So it's basically just a thoroughfare to get the grain to some other market. And so that changed a little bit of that narrative over the last few days. They'll still be able to ship it via rail and get it out of the Ukraine, and it'll still be on the export market. It just, is not going to be for sale in that country or in those countries. So that changed a little bit of that mentality within the market as some of those news stories hash themselves out. We live in a reactionary world. The market is going to be very reactionary to headlines, and sometimes it just takes a couple days to kind of figure out what the true story is.
And on the other side of the ag marketplace, you touched on it a little bit already, but how are the livestock markets looking?
Cattle had another good day. Your feeder calf market in your August, September, October were up $2 again. Fat cattle, your April board was down about $1.32. That's in delivery, so that's one that maybe I don't pay a ton of attention to now. Most of my focus is shifting to the June fat. It was up 75 cents, so that was positive. One of the things I talk about quite often here is the feeder calf index. Your April feeder calf board price is going to go off Thursday the 27th, so in a week. And that index and the April board have got to converge. The board's at 205 and the cash index is all the way up at 206. Had a monster run in the cash market really within the last week. On the 13th of April, that cash index was down at 193, and today it's at 206. So not much over a week, we've seen it pump up about $13, and And so it's kind of making people realize maybe these feeder cattle are harder to find, and that market for it's going to stay strong for a while.
And we've seen with the hogs as well, there's still that pretty big price disparity between cattle and hogs. Are we looking to where we could see a point in the near future with that grilling season demand that prices could come back up again?
A lot of people are looking for that. I think the big one is just the supply has been so big on hogs. Typically, we see supply drop off in the first quarter. We never saw that. We're still looking for supply to drop off now in the second quarter. It's still not. The cash market on hogs is not performing well. The cutout values are low. So we got to grind through this supply that's out there. Once that occurs, then I think that opens up for this hog market to correct itself.
All right, Tyler, lots of great information today for those of our listeners and our viewers who would like to get in touch with the folks at agmarket.net. How can they do that?
Check us out on the internet, agmarket.net. And if you want to call directly, number 701-987-6009.
Thanks for taking the time to visit with us, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
You bet. Take care, Riley.
That again was Tyler Schau of agmarket.net. We'll go ahead and take a look at how those numbers closed. That's courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. May corn is down 8.5 at 663 3/4. December new crop down 5.5 at 557.5. May soybeans down 9 even at 1497.5. November new crop down 8 even at 1300.5. May soybean meal down 3.10 at 451.30. May soybean oil down 59 cents at 54.43. Chicago wheat down 14 even at 667 3/4. Minneapolis spring wheat down 11 1/4 at 855 3/4. Kansas City hard red wheat down 21 1/2 at 840 1/4. May oats down 4 3/4 at 342 1/2. On the Merc, June live cattle up 75 at 164.35. May feeders up 187 at 212.35. May lean hogs down 195 at 76.82. May pork cutout down 232 at 82.70. June class 3 milk up 6 cents at 17.94. And that's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, I talk with Iowa State Climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Well, the weather has been particularly volatile recently as we've had 80-degree days, then down to 30 degrees and snow within the span of the same week. We've already seen that a little bit this week, some nice temperatures yesterday and the day before. Now we're already back into a cooler weather signal for a little bit. So I talked with Iowa State Climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan about what's pushing that weather pattern through the Midwest right now. Well, we are here with Iowa State Climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan for our weekly chat on some of the climate happenings here in Iowa right now. But first off, Justin, can you give us a little bit of an update on what's going on with the drought monitor?
Sure, Riley. Always nice to be with you. Not a lot happening on the drought monitor. We're status quo basically last week, so no change, no improvement, no degradation. Now, last week, if you look at the 7-day temperature average, about 11 degrees warmer than expected, and expected meaning climatologically, so very warm temperatures. We had highs in the 80s and 90s on several days last week, combined with dew point temperatures that were in the 40s. So that's really, really dry air, also windy conditions. So we did see some drying out there, which is ideal for getting planters out and rolling. We don't want to plant into really wet soils, but definitely getting on the drier side. So the expectation, potentially, we could see expansion of that D0 abnormally dry category over the next few weeks. And that's a signal for shorter term dryness, 30 to 60 days, especially as we're ramping up temperatures as we move through the end of April and into May. We're getting into the wettest part of the year, May and June, but also the warmest part of the year, June and July. So that's where we have to be cognizant of all those temperature and precipitation signals.
Well, and those temperatures have been really all over the place recently because last week we saw early on temperatures up to the 80s even. Then we get to the weekend, we have snow and in the 30s. So what's been bringing these cold fronts kind of back through the Midwest again and again?
Yeah, roller coaster in terms of weather. Definitely larger scale low pressure systems are transversing the United States. So in front of those, you get really warm temperatures. And then as that cold front swings through, those two air masses, cold and warm, collide. You can get thunderstorms and severe weather. And then on the backside, as that low pressure system rotates, pulls in cold air from the northwest, and hence we get into those colder temperatures as we saw over the weekend, along with some snowfall. We had about 3.5 inches, in fact, up in Sway City, so very northern part of Iowa, but definitely all modes of weather over the last 2 weeks.
Well, and speaking of that snow, we've had, with those warmer temperatures, a lot of melting of the snowpack, especially the further north that you get. And of course, we're seeing flooding from that as well. What's the scenario looking like there?
Excellent point. So we had game planned this scenario, I think, several weeks out. We had chatted about this a few weeks ago, that the basically what you would call the sum of all fears scenario would be that snowpack existing in through middle of April and getting into very warm temperatures. Well, both of those things happened, and what we're seeing now is major to moderate flooding along the Mississippi River from Wisconsin all the way down, potentially Keokuk over the next week or two, getting into May. We're not expecting, record crests in terms of moderate to major flooding, but nonetheless, flooding does have impacts on the cities and municipalities in which are experience that flooding. But also, we've had some lower river levels over the last year or two. So raising those river levels does impact transportation up and down the Mississippi side. So there, the silver lining there is those elevated river levels. Once we start to see a decline in the flooding that we're seeing, we should see normal river levels, which will impact, the cost of inputs up and down the river.
Well, and we know with those drier conditions that we've seen recently as well, that, like you said earlier, looks good for planting, being able to get into the field. With the flooding, there can be issues there as well. And then these temperature swings, you don't really want the crops coming up at a bad time temperature-wise. So how are we looking for that planting window this year?
I think the initial planting window was great last week, and then we had that cool down over the weekend, as we mentioned earlier. We're looking at the outlook 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks. On the temperature side, we are seeing a slightly elevated signal for cooler temperatures. Now, again, we're not getting a signal there that would suggest a widespread frost or freeze. The growing points of corn and beans won't be out or shouldn't be out impacted by these cooler temperatures. But overall, not a strong signal that suggests anomalously cold temperatures. But we also need to be cognizant we have had snowfall events in May. They're anomalous again, but there's always a potential for patchy frost or freeze if weather conditions are there. But overall, as I mentioned, a cooler stretch, it looks like in the outlooks, and then near normal to slightly below average precipitation within that time period as well.
And of course, there's that potential for a transition to El Nino as well, right?
Yes, in fact, kind of took us by surprise. I was looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies in the tropical Pacific, getting ready for a presentation last week or 2 weeks ago, and had noted that the sea surface temperatures were above average, and that suggests an El Nino, which we're currently in an ENSO neutral, which means near normal sea surface temperature anomalies that don't impact the atmosphere. But in the most updated modeling, it looks like the potential is there for a rapid shift to El Nino in the May, June, July timeframe, anywhere from 62 to 65%. And that goes against what we initially thought earlier, a few months out, that we would stay in ENSO neutral conditions into late summer and then see that transition to El Nino. Now, what does that mean for weather? Well, generally, if you look at analog years in which we've seen ENSO neutral to El Nino, in the summertime, cooler temperatures and near normal to slightly wetter conditions. So not as dry as that La Nina phase that we had been stuck in for 3 years. So overall, we'll just have to see the rapidity at which those anomalies start to impact the atmosphere, but we are currently in an El Nino watch.
All right, lots of great information today, Justin. For those of our listeners who would like to get in touch and learn more, or even report some weather conditions to your office, how can they do that?
Yes, we love those weather reports. We love those conditions on the ground, especially as we're getting planted and moving into the growing season, to help us mesh up with what we're seeing in the models versus on the ground observations for the drought monitor, also wetness monitor if we do get into a wet patch. My office line is 515-281-8981. Email is justin.glisan@iowaagriculture.gov. And Google Iowa Climatology Bureau. It has all kinds of weather reports, the climatological outlooks, soil conditions, and my contact information.
Great talking with you today, Justin, and we'll talk again next week.
Always a pleasure, Riley.
All right, that again was Iowa State Climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan. Speaking of the weather, let's go ahead and take a look at that ag weather outlook. Last night was a rainy one, as there were thunderstorms that hung around pretty much the whole night and dumped off quite a bit of rain. Of course, we will always take that as we are still getting out of a drought period. Now, looking through today, those storms are exiting the state, clouds decreasing a little bit, and then into tomorrow, we're looking at a more clear day before those clouds return. So let's see what the National Weather Service has in store for the next 24 hours. As you can see from the National Weather Service, those storms will be clearing off for a little bit. Today, those storms are still passing through the state. Clouds will clear off later, highs ranging from the upper 40s to low 70s. Tonight, it'll be partly cloudy to mostly clear with a slight chance for isolated storms in the east, lows ranging from the low 30s to about 40. Tomorrow, it'll be breezy with increasing clouds and a chance for wintry mix in the northwest, highs ranging from the low 40s to upper 50s. And taking a look at the affiliate weather map for tomorrow, Cherokee will be cloudy with a chance for a wintry mix and a high of 43. Shenandoah mostly cloudy, high of 53. Des Moines partly sunny, high of 53 as well. Waterloo partly sunny, high of 51. Albion mostly cloudy, high of 57. And Clinton will see mostly cloudy skies with a high around 59. For more detailed forecasts in your part of the state, make sure to check in with your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. That's been a check of the Ag Weather Outlook, and that also brings us to the end of this episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn. You can find all of our video content as well as previous episodes of AMPM on our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when those videos go live. Don't forget as well our free twice daily market podcasts on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.